Let's go, everyone that's with us on the call. Excuse me, my name is Mike, and last name is Stout. For this, I'm going to be the screening guy, and here we go again. This is going to be part two. Trish isn't probably going to be able to make it this time. She's in the middle of an inspection, but we're lucky enough to still have Supriya and Karen on the call with us. Like to say a big welcome to them. You want to we each maybe take a brief I don't know, 30 seconds or whatever you want. Just introduce yourself again. Just for those that didn't weren't able to listen to the first call, part one of the eviction webinar. Who'd like to go first?
Supriya, go.
Why did I know you were going to do that? Okay, no problem. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Karen. Really honored to be here with the two of you again, and we hope Trish can join us. If she can, she will. We know that. Again, my name is Supriya Sriraman, and I am an independent rental owner. I own and self-manage single-family and multi-family communities. I started this business not too long ago. Maybe I've been here doing this for four or 5 years. Prior to that, I'm an engineer by profession, worked in high-tech engineering, Fortune 500 companies for 20 years, maybe, before I came into real estate and started doing this. So I do manage my own properties, and I use Mike's company, NTN, for screening. And I've been very successful because of that. I've learned a lot from that. The screening process is key, as we'll talk about that today. There's Trish. Hey, Trish.
Hi.
Here she is.
Today we will talk about evictions and the screening process. So anyway, so that's a little bit of my background, and I'll hand it over to Karen and Trish to introduce themselves.
Oh, well, thank you again. And thank you everyone for joining us on the second eviction webinar. My name is Karen Fisher, and I too am a real estate investor. Been doing it actively since 2013, but we joined Lifestyles Unlimited back in 2009, where my husband was the one who did it. But now I've been self-managing. We have a mix of multi and single family properties throughout the state of Texas. And just like Supriya said, we've used Mike, and he is the screening guy. So he is screening guy extraordinaire and will help you out. Any questions you ever have, you go to Mike and he'll help you out. But just want to share our experiences with you and hope that you can improve your process with your real estate properties. Tricia.
Hello there. As you can see, I'm in my car. we're taking this on the road today, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Tricia Masson. I'm in Savannah, Georgia. I started with Lifestyles back in 2013. I'm an IRO here, and that means that I own multifamily on our own, and I also own single family, and we're also passively investors in apartment deals across the country. Mike Stout has been with me since 2012 and screening, even across state lines when we lived in Texas. Now we're in Georgia, and he's still our go-to guy to have our background checks done.
Thank you, ladies. Appreciate the kind words. That means probably more than you think. A few things to mention. We've got folks from all across the country on this call. Some are members of the mentoring group, Lifestyles Unlimited. Some are not. I would suggest you take a look at the organization's fantastic. That's without turning into a commercial. We'll leave it at that. But I could go on the entire hour about the organization, but we won't do that. We're here to talk about evictions, and little teaser. If you were on the first call we had, Karen, after the call, was headed to an actual eviction case. So we're going to go through that here in a bit. But the first thing I want to talk about really is how to potentially keep yourself out of eviction courts if you can, and what's that look like? And so we'll start with kind of the life cycle of the application process. I like to call it phase processing, but they really both kind of mean the same thing. I see it as kind of, you start where you meet the applicant, whether it be in person or digitally some way, and then if they pass that piece, we move them into the screening process. If they pass the screening process, we move them into, maybe we're verifying employment, et cetera, and then moving into signing lease documents, et cetera. But who wants to start talking about that and what their process looks like? Okay, Karen, you're up.
What?
You popped up on my screen, so.
Oh, okay, fine. First and foremost is to have a rental criteria in place. It's all about fair housing. You want to make sure you don't deviate from that. You have to have something standardized in writing, and make sure that your resident, or rather your prospect, is aware once they're submitting their application what their rental criteria entails. From then on, there is no question. This is here, and then you have them acknowledge it by signature. So really I would say the foundation is to have that rental criteria in place, and you don't deviate from that. From applicant to applicant, everyone is screened the same way, and then you proceed from there. Ladies?
So just want to throw this question out there, or maybe it's a comment, I don't know. But when we talk about rental criteria, sometimes people think of it as something it's not. And I've found over the years, the best way I can kind of describe it is, if you think about, so let's say you're applying for a job for some reason, and there's certain qualifications that you have to qualify for that position. And I think rental criteria is very similar to that. Meaning, these are the things we're looking for. Maybe it's income requirements or length of residency, et cetera, those kinds of things. Just wanted to kind of clarify for those that maybe didn't know what exactly we mean when we say rental criteria. So,
yeah, correct.
That's it.
I wanted to let other folks just maybe break it down in detail on what they do. But again, the gist of it is just make sure that you use that for every applicant. Correct.
Yes, Karen. So that's right. She started us off with that one needs to have a rental criteria. It needs to be uniform. So, and what we need to have in the rental criteria is pretty much that you are going to screen them. Don't just look at them and say, oh, I think you make enough money. You look good. I will approve you. You have to use a third-party screening company to screen them. So that'll check their credit, criminal background, any collections they have, their debt to income ratio, and so on and so forth. So you do that screening, number one. And at the same time, to income, just because they say they make $40,000 a year, do they really make it? So income verification. The third one is you need to verify if they've had rental history. And so that process will come after they pay you the money, but your rental criteria needs to explain all this. What are you going to do? What are your application fees? Do you have admin fees? What do you do for your screening? And what do you do with dogs? Do you accept any animals? So all that will be in your written criteria. What will approve them? What will deny them? What will conditionally approve them? So there are some gray areas. Everything is not black and white. What if they're conditionally approved? And if they need a guarantor. So we'll go in detail, but that's the outline of the top 2 or 3 things that you need to do. I always tell people 3 things: screening, income verification, rental verification. Then there'll be other things that go into that, but these are the 3. Trish, do you do anything differently, or is there?
Yeah, that's I was going to say, those are the 3 main check marks you want to get off, is that what you had mentioned, because those are the most important, and then we go in depth after we see those qualify.
Yeah.
Great.
If I can caveat, one of the things that I definitely do is, before I even get any money, I want to make sure that they're aware, because time is very valuable, and also their money is very valuable. So I want to make sure before I even go to the actual screening process that they do meet those qualifications. So just having it out there, putting it out there that these are the ... dots, make sure that yes, you will, on paper, what you have provided to me, you will meet those qualifications. So right then and there, that's a big thing too.
Correct. Yes, that goes a long way in prospect relations also. They may come back the next year to lease with you, or 6 months later if they qualify. Always ask them, before I take money from them, I ask them how many occupants. Sometimes they're trying to move into my studio with 5 occupants. No, that doesn't meet my occupancy. I'm so sorry. I said, would you like a 2-bedroom instead? They said, no, I make only $700 a month. Like, sorry, can't do that. So ask them these questions, but just stay in the confines of fair housing. Don't ask them questions like, do you have children? And all that is a separate fair housing class, but definitely ask them, like Rich said, before you take their money, do you have any animals or pets? Always, that's a good question. Don't just say, do you have any pets? They'll say no. The next thing on move-in day, they're showing up with a 70-pound dog or a little tiger. They say, this is my emotional support animal. You never asked me, you just asked me pet. I said, no, I don't have a pet. This is not my pet. This is my 70-pound dog or something, right? German Shepherd or something shows up. But if it's not in your rental criteria, or a pit bull, a lot of insurance companies will not approve a pit bull. Anyway, we digress, but pretty much ask them before you take their money, how many occupants, do you have any animals or pets? And tell them that we do require your income to be 2.5 times or 3 times the rent. Just tell them all this and tell them we will deny you if you owe previous landlord. That's in your rental criteria. Tell them these things so they have an opportunity to walk away.
So I saw a question pop up. Someone asked, and I think it's a good time to touch on this. It's talking about unemployment, and you and I have talked about this before, Supriya. But what we'll just throw this back to you. What's your take on unemployment as a verifiable source of income?
I do not accept that. It's only earned income. I moved somebody in with unemployment last month, but I required a guarantor. So this is a good time to talk about a guarantor. They had unemployment. I said, you will not get approved and on their income. So income is something that if they don't have income, you can always get a guarantor, and try to get a guarantor in the same state. So if you need to evict them or go to court, you can. So the guarantor guarantees that the rent is paid. You're screening the guarantor for income, but the applicant themselves must qualify in terms of their screening, which you will do to NTN or any other company of your choice, and they must qualify in terms of rental history. Their guarantor is not guaranteeing their rental history or their criminal history or anything. The guarantor is there in place only for the income part of it.
So Supriya, for that part on the guarantor, what you mentioned about it being in the same state, do you ever accept people that are not in the same state?
I do. I've done that before because I have had students that come in from out of state. But at that time, I will make sure that I talk to the guarantor on the phone or a video call, and I will keep their documents with me, like their driver's license, their social security, their income statements, and all that. I make sure I keep. It's the same process, but I make sure that I talk to them.
Okay, so you do also do the full rental criteria on the guarantor as well?
I do not. They're not required to have rental just because rental history. I do the rental criteria. That's important. The criteria for the screening and income. I do not do rental history. I don't require them. Most times guarantors are in a house, and it doesn't matter to me even if they're in an apartment, I don't do rental history on them. I do run their screening. Income, I require 5 times the rent instead of 6 times for an applicant. The prospect, the person who's going to be living in the apartment, I require only 3 times. But when they bring in a guarantor, it's 5 times or 6 times.
Yeah, because they're going to have to cover if they can't make it, right?
They have to cover their own, where the guarantor is living, they have to cover their own mortgage or their own rent of their current apartment, and also for our resident. So the income criteria is different. So in the rental criteria, that's also mentioned in the income section, saying the applicant needs to make so much, but if there's a guarantor, the guarantor needs to make 5x. So make sure you mention that in your written rental criteria.
Excellent. So this is not really related to evictions, but since we're talking about best practices, I think I'll throw the question out. When during the screening process, we come to a decision. Let's say if we approve someone, we approve them. But what if we deny them or conditionally accept them? And really, I want to focus on conditionally accept them. There are requirements that some folks just don't know, and they don't know it. What I'm getting at is if we conditionally accept, we're not accepting them under normal circumstances, and so it does require an adverse action letter to be sent. I just wanted to touch on how do you handle that?
Great. You want me to go, or does?
For it, Supriya.
So of course, so that's the adverse action letter. Absolutely, we need to send that out. And what that means is if the applicant does not qualify on their own, and there could be conditions, you can straight out deny them, for instance, but we're talking about conditional approval. And in which case is it conditional? One, they may not make enough income. So we send them to screening, and NTN turns around and says, they don't make the income. You required 3 times. This person makes only 2 times, or they'll give you the multiplier 1.9 times or 2 times or 2.5 times, whatever. So that's a conditional approval. I'll say you're not approved. Here's your adverse action letter. It's based on the income. If you bring me a guarantor, or if you can show more income, you'll be approved. This is not 3x. If you can't bring me a guarantor, then you won't be approved. So that's one aspect of conditional approval. There'll be another one where it could be where they're right on the borderline. Maybe they don't have, there's something in their collections is very high. So I can conditionally approve them with an additional deposit or risk fee. So there are several ways but we will get an adverse action letter and we need to send that to them.
Ladies, Karen, Tricia, you want to add anything?
Supriya didn't. Supriya got answering that.
She covered it all.
Thank you. Maybe I didn't. You'll ask Mike.
So let's move along. Just before, again, just to tease the eviction war story we got coming up. And maybe it wasn't a war. I don't even know, but we'll find out soon enough. But let's talk about we're at the point where we've completed the screening. What are we looking for? And I'll ask somebody that's not Supriya this time. Although she can certainly answer the question.
Tricia.
No, what did he say? What was your question, Mike? I didn't get the whole question.
Sorry. So when you have your screening, let's say we've screened the applicants and we've got our docs in front of us, or the screening reports in front of us. What are you looking for, or what are you not looking for, in terms of to approve it to move from that phase or piece of the process into leasing the apartment to them or leasing the home to them?
Oh, well, what I would say about what I don't like is, extreme debt collections, repossessions, evictions. So those are a big no-no when we see that on the credit report. Let's see, and also income, their past rental history, their past addresses where they lived, if they're skipping from apartment to apartment. Let's see, I'm trying to think. And we love the ones that are, have great credit scores and have, a great income and great rental history. Those are, a check mark approved. But definitely, you've got, renters with outstanding medical, cable, telephone, and car repossessions, you name it. If the list goes on and on, we won't approve that.
Karen?
Nope. Tricia.
Thank you, Tricia.
And the reason we're going over all this is we are trying to prevent that eviction happening later. That's the reason we're talking about all this now. If you have a good process up front, you make sure you're doing all this, don't cut corners. And it's also important to remember, you may not be doing this. It may be somebody else on site who's doing this for you, maybe a manager, a leasing agent. Make sure they understand the process and do inspect their work. I mean, you may not be able to do every one of them, but go check every month or something, look at the screenings that have been done, see if they're following the process that you've laid out for them. So you may be doing it, but laying out the process, but if somebody else is executing it or implementing it, make sure they are following what you've asked them to do. Otherwise, you could end up in a really bad situation.
It's so true, because I have hired a property manager to manage our property, so I can, acquire more without being hands-on and being on the property and doing the leasing and full property management. So for me to supervise the leasing consultant that's doing all of the prospects and applicants and future residents, I'm, making sure that what she does follows my criteria. I mean, because they are a separate property management company, but they'll also go along with, what my criteria is and adjust to, what I would accept versus what they would accept. So, for every person that's placed in, they still ask me, what do you think about this? At some point, I'll be less hands-on when it comes to that, but I still like to know who's going in and if they meet our qualifications.
Correct. At least until they are trained. Initially, you have to supervise and look at each one of them, but once you have the confidence that they get it, they're following your process, then we can be less hands-on at that point, right?
Yes. Yeah.
They can set full
I don't think we could ever not be hands-on, Supriya and Karen, because that's
Agreed.
in our nature to have a handle of things and to watch, the asset. So, I mean, it's just not possible to say they've got this, because, we're always overseeing the work that's being done.
You're right.
Well said. I think that if we don't have any other, comments about that, let's move into having a discussion with Karen and the eviction that we've all been waiting to hear about or talk about or share. So with that, go.
Alrighty.
I mean, I can ask you questions like whatever.
Okay. Well, let me give you what happened, and then if we do have questions, then we'll do that. For everyone that's watching, understand this applies to San Antonio, Bexar County in specific in Texas. So depending on where you are, even if you are in Texas, locally, every district, every JP will do something slightly different. So what we had, that resident that we filed the eviction on, that individual was for non-payment of rent. We try to communicate with her. For me, the biggest thing is that I always share with my residents is please keep an open line of communication. Let me know what's going on, because if you don't talk to me, all I'm gonna assume is that you're avoiding me and we're not going to work as a team. So that is the first and biggest thing. Unfortunately, this person did not keep in touch with my assistant PM. She avoided like crazy. So we went ahead and issued the notice to vacate. And FYI, just remember to make sure that you document everything, that you have the paperwork in your files, and that you have it annotated, specifically the method of delivery. The judges are asking the date and the method in which it was delivered. So you want to make sure that your process is in place and it is clear, so that whomever is the one that's issuing those notices, that they do it correctly. So we went ahead and we issued the notice to vacate. The individual did contact my PM and said, hey, are you willing to take a partial, but never did anything after that. She only stated it, but never followed through with actually providing partial payment. Because of this unique situation, we have actually, as we mentioned in the previous webinar, done partial payments. But there's a point now where unfortunately people are taking advantage of the system and they're not. And yet they are filing a CDC declaration stating that they're doing their everything, making last-ditch effort. This individual did file, so we did get an attorney involved. And this was pre-Texas had the 34th Supreme Court order. So I don't want to get too much into detail, but what happened, the person did file the declaration. We had it reset for 1 week, had the attorney file a contest for the CDC declaration because that individual did not do what was stated in the CDC dec. Revisited, had the trial, and the judge, she was there, and we explained everything, and the judge did award the judgment to us because the resident did state that she does owe the monies. So as long as you make sure that you have everything in writing, that you are communicating with the person, things like that, that's, I would definitely say, is just make sure that you get a clear process in place for any potential evictions that are going on.
So
Great
how,
story.
how long did that take you? The process roughly? Was it
The whole
a
process-
long?
It's within 30 days. Normally, we don't have covered properties. So if you are a covered property, you still have to give that 30-day additional notice. But because we own our properties cash, and we like Tricia or IROs, are independent rental owners, so we own everything ourselves and no loans or anything. So it's not a covered property. I stress that because if you are a covered property, you still have to get that additional 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it was the traditional 3-day notice to vacate. After that 3rd day, if they're not out, then we'll go ahead and file, and then within that time frame. So I would definitely say within a 30-day period. But a caveat to that is because they're starting to catch up, but before, when everything happened last year, our cases were postponed months because the court system was shut down. So I would say now, if you want to talk about within these last 3 months, I would definitely say within maybe 30, Riley, maybe within a 30-day window for sure.
Scheduling, yes, and then that's the case after extra.
Yeah, well, and for this particular case, because we had to reset it, it added a couple, a week. But normally within a 30-day window.
Got it. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Was it virtual or in person?
They actually had a mix. We ended up doing it virtual, but the resident was there in the court. And the one thing is Texas has this rent relief program. So they're providing help. We still try to provide assistance, try to give them just in case they're not aware that they can apply for rental assistance. We do provide the information to the residents, but if not, there is somebody at the courts there that are willing to are willing to help with rent relocation. So it would behoove them if they do show up that happens,
Mm-hmm.
that they're there and they help them out that way.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like really overall it wasn't that painful process. It probably wasn't a joy, but I've heard worse as kind of, and I'm sure you have too.
For covered,
I also had worse. And unfortunately things do happen where it does, some people have delayed it. I did have one few months back where we were waiting for the rental assistance to come in. So every week that we had reset it, we would reset it yet again. So it took almost 2 months because I was waiting for rental assistance. So there are many different cases based on just what the situation is. But if it's just a cut and dry, you have a normal regular one within 30 days as a non-payment of rent. One of the things I do definitely I've noticed is I've now had evicted folks on breach of contract. And I'm not trying to do a lynch mob. I mean, these are legitimate things. If they have violated the lease, where we've had people that have moved in unauthorized occupants, are disrupting our business, things of disrupting and disturbing their neighbors, really bad things, because they thought that that nothing was going to happen, that they can do whatever they wanted, and that that the landlord had no means to move them out, and that is not the case. So we have had evicted folks on breach of contract. So
Yes.
that is a possibility as well. And then, of course, those that are, their lease terms are expiring, we issue a notice, in an advance notice, that we're terminating the lease. And you have to make sure that you go based on what your contract states and the number of days specified with your contract, that you give them that advance notice. So if there's an individual has had a holdover, we have also evicted them for that.
Correct. So Karen, how long did this particular resident that you evicted, how many days was it that they didn't pay? Just that month they didn't pay, or the previous month too? How long?
She was two months behind.
Okay.
She was 2 months. And then the first month, I think she was gonna pay. I have my PM here, so I'm like, give me a cue here. I actually am trying to be more hands off, believe it or not. But I definitely depend on her. But yeah, we, again, we did try to communicate with her, and she was just pretty much ghosted us. And then we ended up just trying to work with her, and then we filed the eviction.
Very good. So just to tell everybody who's listening in today, eviction is only for possession. So
Yes.
just so all of you understand, what Karen was trying to do is just to get her apartment back, to get possession. The money they owe, 30 days, 60 days, that she will need to follow a different process, go through collections or do whatever. There will be a judgment against them, but what the judge does not award you, the JP will not go after them to get you the money. All they're doing is to get your property back to you. And that's really what all of us want. We don't want somebody squatting there for months on end, trashing the place, and then you're not collecting rent, and they're just disruptive to business. You want them out so you can at least lease it, get your apartment back or your home back, and you lease it out again.
Hey, Mike, I have a question for you.
Got it. Go.
What's your influx of like the reports looking like for, since it's been the past year with COVID? What's your screening looking like right now? Has it been wildly changed, or we're still?
That's a really good question. And overall, I think it's been pretty stable. It certainly hasn't been as negative. What I've seen hasn't been anywhere near as negative, or the impact hasn't been as negative as I expected it would be. The one thing I say that I have seen a large uptick in the last few months, and largely this is going to relate to Texas-based clients, is that when there's a non-payment situation, there's also largely been damages situation as well. And again, the question becomes, yeah, we filed an eviction, we won, and we've got possession, but now what do we do? And that's the bigger piece. And knowing to go to a collection agency is probably the most important thing to add. And I know that's not what you asked me, but since I'm talking, I would stress that. And the judgments are wonderful as well, but because judgments aren't on credit files any longer, no one sees that if they screen them. But they will see the collection piece. And so those are things to know. For years and years and years, judgments were on credit files, but they just aren't anymore. We could go into why that is or why I think that is, but there's no need. The bottom line is they're not there. So make sure to find a collection agency that reports to all three bureaus. There's lots of them out there that will report to one and sometimes two, but make sure you find three or that report to all three. But that's the biggest piece I've seen. It doesn't seem like applicants are plunging, and maybe that's just based on the our clients. They it just kind of is. I did expect it to plummet. I really did, but there's just not this big black hole. I'm saying.
That's good.
Yes, it's good for our clients anyhow, and it does happen every once in a while. We'll get somebody who just typically it tends to be their rental criteria. Maybe it's just not strong or stringent enough, and so they're kind of getting the I don't know what you're supposed to call them. I'll call them riffraff. The sort of the bottom of the rental pool. And once the criteria is changed, and now we know, oh no, we don't. We want the higher income generators or those kinds of things. It tends to kind of work itself out. Good question. Supriya, Karen, you want to touch that?
In the past few months, I have seen a lot of, as compared to pre-COVID, I've seen a lot of bad screening results come out. Applicants just applying, thinking they'll get approved. And they argue with me saying, but no, I couldn't make the money. I lost my job. That's why I owe this community money. They're still asking me for the money. And like, too bad. You owe them. Like, I'm not accepting you. So they argue with me also saying, so I have seen in the last week alone, right, Mike, I've seen 2 or 3 applicants come in where one had an eviction on record and owed $2,241 to a previous landlord. So the eviction showed up in the screening, and that showed that they owed, the judgment was only for $645 or something. But I also call, one thing to do is when you get the screening report, look at every place that they've lived in that the screening says, not what they've told you. They will list only a mother's address or a parent's or a friend's or somewhere where they've been maybe in the past 5 years, somewhere maybe they've lived there for 6 months or something. They will not list the places they've been evicted from. No, they will not list the places that they have collections from. So
no way, you're kidding.
Not everyone's like that.
Mike and NTN.
Correct. So once we get the screening back from Mike and NTN, I look at those and I call each of those apartment communities. And I've caught people in the past year. I called them. They said, no, they still live here and they owe me 3 months rent. They're trying to get out. Or I call them and they say they were just evicted. I filed an eviction on them last month. So it's still not showing up on the report, but they owe them money. They no longer the property and they owe them $1,000, $2,000, $4,000. So that's why it's key that you follow the process. Don't take no shortcuts. So this is how you'll prevent evictions in future. The reason why we're saying screening is important, upfront process is important. And when you sign the lease too, make sure the lease is signed correctly. Use the current and the correct TAA lease or whichever lease you're using, not an expired one, and the correct people are signing. I have seen a lot of leases where the manager is signing where the leaseholder is supposed to sign, and the leaseholder is signing with the managers. This will not hold good when you go for eviction. So the upfront process is really important. Pay attention to that, please.
And remember that the goal here is not to have this negative thing on thinking, oh, I'll just evict them. The whole point is to get a solid resident in. Your goal is to fill your units with people that are going to enjoy your renting your property, and that hopefully they'll stay in for the long haul. And that's a big thing, is just making sure that, you get those solid folks. So somebody asked in the Q&A I saw, they asked first qualified or best qualified. And I think that you could answer that yourself, and I would agree it's going to be best qualified. You want to make sure you get the solid person in there.
Yeah, with track record, and if you go through all the history of doing your rental criteria, and we've all been babies and started at this, and we put those, ones in that we really shouldn't have because, even though they gave the double deposit, they came with baggage. and they live with baggage. So we're going to get baggage when we put those people in our properties. If, you know, they get in and they bring it to your properties, whether it be, you know, late payments, you know, just the nonsense that people can create on your properties. But that's what I've learned is the more baggage they have, they're just bringing it to you. They're carrying it all with them.
That's true. But if your rental criteria says you don't accept the baggage, you don't. But if your rental criteria says you'll accept the baggage conditionally with additional risk, you do. That's it. So it's all comes down to rental criteria.
Number one, we accept
In the
baggage.
in the very, very beginning, when I did one of the very first apartments, I had this lady come in and she literally had her baggage. She had a file case of her background bills and collections to prove she had paid everything off. She carried that bag with her to prove that she is, you know, taking care of her finances. She was one of those I gave a double deposit to, and she was one of those that skipped. So, I mean, I took that on and learned my lesson.
Yeah, that happens. And I saw a really good question on chat, so I'm going to address that here. Somebody asked that when they call previous or current places for rental verification, they won't tell them, and that is true. Nothing is verbal. Make sure you have to send them something in writing. And when you send them in writing so you need a form for rental verification saying, here I want to do rental verification on person X. And when did they live there? Did they pay rent? Do they have any lease violations? Did they give you proper notice to vacate? Just a one-page form. And at the bottom of that form, you need to attach a release from the applicant that they are okay with that. So if you are using a TAA lease application or any other lease application, at the bottom there is a section where they sign off, where the applicant says, I authorize you, whether it's my property management company or Tricia's or Karen's, I authorize such and such to verify my rental history, my income history. By all means, they have to provide consent. So you have to give the current and the previous landlord consent saying, look, your resident has consented to this. So you have to send them that and get it in writing. So you keep it in your file. So if something happens later and they've falsified or something and they never lived there. I've had friends signing for people that I've found that they're falsifying, and so they'll provide on their application just a little bit of a story I had in the past year. On their application, they'll say, this is where I live, this apartment community, here's the name of the manager and the phone number. Don't ever call that number. Google, look up that community, call the office. Because we did both. We called that office and they sent us back, and we called this person also, and they gave us a Hotmail address or some Yahoo address. And this person sent back a glowing rental verification. Oh, great. Always paid on time, makes so much money, no lease violations. When we called the actual community, it came back and they said, oh, this person owes money. They've been late 9 times out of the 11 they've been here. We're ready for them to leave. So it's things like that. So make sure that it's just these little tricks you learn along the way. Just follow process. Don't take shortcuts. Don't ever call the number they give you.
Exactly. I even had a person who submitted pay stubs. I tell you, these people are incredible. They should go into printing business because it looked like a legitimate pay stub.
Yes.
But just as Supriya said, I don't shortcut, and definitely run them. Do your due diligence, because I called the actual place that they stated that they worked at, that they were an assistant manager, and the individual that answered was the assistant manager and said that she doesn't even know who that person is. So don't take it for face value. You really have to do your homework. Because again,
we're investigators.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, truly, but if you think about it, I mean, what are we doing? We're here to prevent an eviction. So if you start with a solid foundation, you're gonna mitigate any potential problems. We're not gonna it's not like even the most solid person, I'm not saying that they're not gonna be evicted, because life happens. But if you have a solid foundation in place, then you're chances are definitely reduced.
Mhm. So just as background, I know I'm bragging, but I have not evicted anybody in 4 or 5 years.
Shut up.
She's an NAA award winner for a reason.
I guess so.
She's super.
Oh, no,
So-
but it's just the process, right? It's the process. And also, I bring in good residents. My properties are higher class properties, class B, class
True.
A. Sometimes
Well-
you get around it in class C properties or lower class.
Yeah, and it's true. It's a different caliber from an A class to our awesome blue collar, you know,
C plus.
yeah, properties. But still, the process should not be any different.
Correct.
It really shouldn't, regardless of what class your property is. The operations of it, the screening process should not deviate.
Correct. So
I saw a question pop up,
Mhm.
and this is going to lead us sort of into, as we start to get to wrapping up and taking questions, lead us into sort of a teaser for hopefully we can do this again, and a situation that one of our fine panelists is sort of facing, and that's this: if you get a record, excuse me, if you get a report back, and in the criminal section it says something like "no record found" or "no reportable record found," what's that mean? And the question I saw specifically was, I think, and I might get the numbers wrong, but someone had disclosed they had been convicted of a crime 11 years ago in the state of Texas, with a couple caveats. If you've been convicted of a crime and it's beyond a 7-year mark, it's not reportable any longer. So it doesn't mean that there's not a record. It means it's not a record that's reportable. Texas is one of 14, 15 states that has that in place. And I think we'll see more states moving to that. But something I just want to mention, and then I'll throw it to the mystery panelist.
Well, again, I go back to what does it say in my rental criteria? And for us, we have a term or a parameter of the number of years, as well as what kind of degree is your charge and what type of charge. So we do not accept any crimes of violence or solicitation or distribution. Or what?
But most of the time I find that if you have people with a felony record, they're not going to meet your criteria with the rental history. I mean, it'll be basically, that's the first one they won't meet, is they won't have rental history, or they'll have bad rental history, and then the income. So we can just base it off of those first two to see if they even meet the check off those boxes on income and rental history.
Yeah.
And many people have had an applicant that's had, an 800 credit score with 3 times the rent, and then, a good paying resident with rental history, and has been evicted or been charged with a felony. Do you ever get that?
So you're
And
saying
they're done that. Seriously.
a person that met all the criteria but had a felony, is that what you're saying?
Right.
Well, you know what? It depends. Again, for us. I moved in a person that had a GTA felony, so Grand Theft Auto. So, if they stole a vehicle, whatever. If they're solid, everything else, we're about second chancing for us. And again, it also depends on what your criteria states. So for us, our criteria, just as long as we don't have those main pointers for felonies, then we will accept those certain folks. And it's a case by case. So
Karen, with the Grand Theft Auto, that person had a good rental history and they had good income.
Yeah, well, they didn't rent. They wouldn't have rented otherwise. They needed to meet those qualifications. And I believe it was just shy of the 7-year was, I think it was like within a 6-year time frame, and their record was clean after that. So they didn't, if it's a pattern and you're seeing that they're just pop, 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 then that's definitely going to be a flag, because you're going to see that they're not meeting our qualifications. But again, there are certain criteria that we, as for a felon, that yes, we will. So,
Ladies, I don't mean to cut you off, but I probably better, because we've got about 10 minutes left, and Karen, you've got to be someplace, as do the rest of us. I guess. So there's a lot of questions, I think, that have come through, but maybe what, just to sort of, I don't, we talked about this. We don't want to stop on or end on a negative sort of note. What positive things are you seeing? And let's try to keep this sort of short, but what positive things are you seeing out there in the I don't know, in the market? Okay.
Great. The one thing I'm seeing is that this year leasing has definitely picked up as compared to 12 months ago, where everything was so bleak. March, April were uncertain. Offices were closed. People were not stepping out to even lease. I'm seeing that's better. But even through the pandemic, the 12 months and ongoing, I'm seeing residents are being responsible. They're coming to me and say, look, I don't want to get evicted, but I do have a problem. My husband has a problem with the job, or I myself have reduced hours. What can you do for me? They're approaching us. And so there are a lot of responsible people out there, and we work with them on a payment plan or talk to them about their options. So those are the positives. It's all people. People are still good. There are a lot. We're talking about these people not paying, getting evicted, but there is still a lot of good in the world. There are good people, good residents who are paying. And Mike, before I stop talking and have Karen and Trish talk, I'm thinking, if we can I'm seeing a lot of questions that we've not answered, but most of them are to do with rental criteria and screening. Maybe we should do a part 3, which talks about the upfront process and also eviction, if we can answer all those questions there about rental.
Yeah, I've tried to see the ones that I happen to catch. They're like, oh, that's a great question. But yeah,
great question.
I think we could, this is going to be an ongoing, thing if we get that done. I saw some. Would you share your criteria? And those are great questions, and we can do another. We could probably do an entire show, excuse me, on designing, building a rental criteria, and a class that I've taught for, I don't know, years. We actually, we'll create rental criteria and what you're looking for and what you're not looking for. But that's yes.
Correct. And also questions like falsification on an application, all that should be in your rental criteria. Eric Sheffer asked that. So that's falsification, and it's an automatic denial. And what if it's less than 10 years? What if it's a crime 20 years ago where they didn't state it? So I'm seeing a lot of good questions. So it will truly end the CPN question. So let's do another session and just focus on the upfront process. How do we have an airtight or good rental criteria and the screening process?
Supriya, I've just been voluntold.
I think we all been voluntold.
I have a positive. We are still, you know what? There are still properties out there to buy. So it's a seller's market, but hey, I'm also willing to buy. So that's actually been a positive. This doesn't discourage me. This is a little hiccup. And, we still stay strong and steadfast. And as long as you have a solid process, you just keep chugging along and you're going to do well. So, and you have, for We Lifestyles members, we have a great team. And then with all the vendors in place as well, it just makes our operations that much easier. So.
Yeah. And on my end of the world, I'm in Savannah, Georgia, so I'm not in Texas. Our market is on fire, and I'm actually going to do an inspection on one of the properties that's located in our apartment community. So we're going to be at 32 units at this apartment community, but it's an insane environment right now with market, but that's just good for us we're still leasing, we haven't ever stopped even with COVID. We're in a different kind of market because we're in a military town. So we don't have the loss of jobs and revenue in our market where the apartments are located. But it's just been incredible. The journey is still incredible, even today in this environment.
Yes, it is. And I've had properties where I'm 100% occupied, no delinquency. So I've enjoyed that, but I've also caught an unauthorized occupant. And these are the kinds of things you can evict on. And April, are you taking down all these questions? I'm seeing a lot of good questions that we didn't get to.
Absolutely. So I'll make sure to share those with you guys when we're done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, any last thoughts? Supriya, good luck with tomorrow or with the thing.
Thank you.
We'll talk about that next time
We'll talk about it next time.
because we've all been. What'd you call that, Karen?
What?
Cliffhanger.
Huh?
You know where she
Oh,
told?
cliffhanger. This is,
Voluntold.
oh.
No.
Oh, then I'm
Voluntold. That's it.
Voluntold. Tricia Supriya voluntold us.
Yep. We need to name this Voluntold.
No, it is actually an honor to be able to share our experiences.
It is.
And just to help, each of us, we want to see success, not failure, and learn from one another. So by golly, yeah, why not? So.
And why make the mistakes, right? If you
Why
can
make the
learn from someone that's already been there, why make those mistakes?
Exactly.
Yep.
I mean, like somebody already made the wheel and it works really well, and we should maybe duplicate it.
Use the wheel.
I mean, without using the words.
All right. Well, thank you guys
I
again.
think we're done.
Yep.
That's a wrap.
Thank you, everybody.
We'll see everyone next time.
See you next
All
time.
right, have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.